of windows and doors and beams and roofs and sizes of rooms and things, that the architecture of a computer is similar. It's where are the holding blocks that can hold certain numbers of ones and zeros? How does memory work? What are the ones and zeros that tell it what to do, like adding things? What are the set of instructions? Well, I discovered this and I thought, oh my gosh, I was in high school by then. I said, back in elementary school, I used to build logic circuits. I understood logic really well. I wonder if I could design a computer. If I could write on paper my little logic formulas that add up to being a computer. Could I do it? And at first I failed, and then finally I succeeded. And then I got more and more descriptions of computers, the architecture, every one I could get. And the way I would get these manuals of computers is there were no computer books. There were no computer information in stores or bookstores or anything, magazine stores. But I would drive down on Sundays with a friend from high school, and we would drive down to Stanford Linear Accelerator Center. It was the furthest out physics research in the world. It was like what CERN is today, you know, looking for the God particle and all. And we would drive in, and we'd drive to the main building, and we'd try the doors. It turns out the smartest people in the world worked at Stanford Linear Accelerator Center. The smartest people in the world. Well, the smartest people in the world never lock doors. I will tell you. So we always find a door open. We'd go in, and we'd go up to the second floor. We found the library. And I would sit down and read magazines about computers and books about computers. And I could order manuals of computers. Unbelievable. You know, people might call that bad, that you went into a place you weren't supposed to be in. But all I did was to order information so I could learn. What I was doing was actually good. And so I started designing these computers, one after another, after another, after another, and I never knew what my designs were worth. I couldn't ever buy a single part to build it. A little tiny chip that's like a light switch cost maybe $50 back then. You couldn't possibly buy these chips, they were too expensive. But I loved designing it on paper. Every weekend, I would shut my door. My parents were out of it, my friends were out of it, my teachers were out of it. It was on my own because I loved doing it. And wanting to do something is so much more important than anything else. When I came to teach young kids for 8 years later on, it was less important what I taught them, more important to motivate them and to have fun doing it, to want to learn. Somebody who wants to learn, somebody who wants to accomplish something cannot be stopped. It's a much more powerful motivation than any salary or stock or awards or business titles. I told my father when I discovered one great architecture example that was based around the parts that are building blocks, the chips of the day. It was the 4K Data General Nova computer. You need a 4K computer to run a programming language so you can type in chess programs and things. Real work. Computers normally were just, you saw pictures of front panels, switches and lights and weird little nomenclature, and nobody in the world could understand it except a computer expert. They just weren't like today. Front panels, switches and lights, ones and zeros, push some buttons and some ones and zeros go into this thing called memory. I mean, it was just such awful geeky stuff, but that's what the world was like, and I wanted a computer that could really, I could type on a human keyboard and get my programs in. So I told my dad, someday I'm going to have one of these Nova computers. I had posters of it on my wall in my bedroom. That's how geeky I was. And a friend of mine in school did too, when there were two of us. And it wasn't Steve Jobs, it was another guy. So I told my father, I'm going to build Nova someday, and he said, how are you going to do that? It costs as much as a house. I said, I'm going to live in an apartment. I threw down the gauntlet. I was going to have a computer in my life. That was an important goal of mine. And I didn't forget that goal, just like I didn't forget the goal of teaching in later years. Well, I went off to my first year at college, and computers were a graduate level course. Introduction to computers. Introduction was graduate level. Because I was a freshman in engineering, I was allowed to take the course. And I got an A+ in it because I knew so much about computers already. And I learned a ton that year, and I started writing programs. that calculated valuable scientific tables of numbers. I ran so many programs, I ran our class budget 5 times over. I was doing something good. I was learning how to write programs on a computer, how to solve things, how to get tables of useful numbers, but it was treated like, oh my gosh, there was a side of things. I had done something out of the ordinary, so it was bad in a way. The next year, a friend of mine duplicated the key to the computer room in the college I went to. And we would go in at midnight. We would power on this IBM 360 Model 40, power on the disk drives and the tape drives and the printers and everything. And I would start sending my punch cards into the machine and running my programs, looking at the outputs, correcting them, writing more cards in. Had a great time, and we'd shut the thing down at 4 in the morning and nobody knew we were there. I was doing a good thing. A computer was sitting there unused, and I wanted to educate myself and learn how to use it and write great programs. I wasn't doing anything bad, no vandalism, no destruction, but it would have been treated as though it were bad, what I was doing. After my second year of college, I wanted to pay my own way through college. My parents didn't have that much money, and so I went to work for 1 year to earn the money for my 3rd year of college. And thankfully, from the minute I was out of high school, I never had to worry about a job. I was so skilled at all kinds of engineering, I could always run down to an electronics company and get a job. I didn't go through what most young people go through, which is worrying about what they're going to do and what kind of job they're going to get after college or something. So I went to work at a company. I walked in the door by accident and found they were designing a computer. I got a job for a year programming that computer. I went in at night to run a program of my own, just for me. And the program calculated the esoteric mathematical number E to 138,000 decimal places. And I went in, I ran this program, and somebody else came in. They saw me doing it, and they acted like what I was doing was bad and wrong. It wasn't company business. Here I was, educating myself, you know, taking a computer to, you know, its limits and doing amazing things, and yet it was treated as though it was bad because it was unusual. So just wanting to do things that are new and different, you sometimes get that feeling. I ride a little 2-wheeled Segway, and very often you go up against people that just want to get these Segways off our sidewalks, get them off our streets, get them out of our parks. And it's only really because it's so new and different and they don't understand it. But that's good. Well, at that company where I worked, an executive heard that I used to design any computer in the world I could design in 2 days. That was roughly how good I was. And so he said he'd get me the chips if I could design a computer. I went home. I designed a very small computer. I brought in my design, and he got me the chips to build my own computer. I had to make a phone call and find some memory. 256 little bitty bytes of memory, but it was enough to make this little machine work. And I had switches on the front. 1s and 0s, 1s and 0s. Push a button, and the 1s and 0s go into memory. So it was like computers are. I knew computers very well. I built this little computer. We drank cream soda while we built it, so Bill Fernandez and myself called it the cream soda computer. And Bill said, you should meet this other guy from our high school, Steve Jobs, because he knows digital electronics, and he also likes to play pranks at school, jokes, and I was well known for that. So I met Steve Jobs around that time. And we talked about what we knew in electronics, and he wasn't really a designer like I was, but he had been around it. He had taken the same electronics course from the same teacher at our high school. And we were in the counterculture movement. It was very big in the San Francisco area. And I admired all these people that talked about living life very differently than you ever thought was possible, very differently than normal. I admired that. And Steve became more of like a real hippie. My feet were solidly on the ground because I was so smart I would always be able to get a job and have a family and be normal. So I didn't really go off and do a lot of the hippie things, but Steve was younger. And he would walk around bare feet and a little sack of seeds that he would eat from, and he would talk about, you know, Eastern religion and go over to India. He was more like a true hippie. And to tell the truth,